Hello, dear friends. A warm welcome to everybody for this video session. This is Dr. Narayan. Would like to share some of the experiences about the learning difficulties in schools through this video lecture. So, dear friends, before going to discuss about any detail, it's very important to talk about the concept of learning difficulties at the outset. The term learning difficulty is a broad term, or it is an umbrella term because it covers different areas of difficulties that pupils have experienced during learning process. Those difficult areas can be reading, writing, spelling, solving mathematical problems, processing informations, or in any adaptive skills. So when we are talking about the areas of learning difficulties, let's have an example, reading difficulties. How a teacher can know a child is having some reading difficulties. We have to observe some of the behavioral indices. From that indices, we can label a child is a children with reading difficulties. Those behavioral indices can be that child does not read fluently and willingly. Child experience difficulty in sequencing. Child frequently reverses the letters like B as a D, C as a E, U as a V, F as a 7, like that. Even child tends to read words backwards or upside down, like B as a D, P as a D, M as a W, N as a U, and so on. Even frequently reverse words. For example, was as a shirt, bat as a tab, and the like. Again, child reads words wrongly, like girl is a grill. Reverse the numbers like 6 as a 9, 13 as a 31, and so on. Child produces mispronunciation. Even he makes skipping, adding, substituting the words. These are the behavioral indices, indicates a particular child is having the reading difficulties. Similarly, when you are talking about the writing difficulties as an area of learning difficulties, children usually displays some of the behavior like he or she cannot put the ideas on paper, or he cannot explain the ideas or explain the things in sequence. For example, suppose you as a teacher will assign the task to the children that you have to observe this situation or the event and write the event in a sequential or in a logical order. In that situation, children with writing difficulties cannot express his ideas or express the event of what he observed sequentially. Children with writing difficulties usually avoids routine work in the classroom, mixes letters frequently, shows very less idea of paragraph formation, displays the difficulties in copying from board or overhead project. Even children with writing difficulties displays the behavior that is poorly formed letters, exhibit spacing problems between words, letters, difficulty in using capitals in appropriate context or in appropriate uh, situation. Those children can have confusion over similar letter shape, words that is P as a D or B, was for sure, so on. Children with writing difficulties also experience the problem in remembering what to write. They grasp a pencil or pen awkwardly and often commit errors in copying from the other printed material. They usually exhibit the problem of poor fine motor coordination. These are the indices the children with the writing difficulties displays through which a teacher in the classroom can label a particular children is having with the writing difficulties. Similarly, when you are talking about the mathematic problem, which we called as a dyscalculia or a calculia, the child also displays some unique problems like difficulties in grasping the difference between upward and downward, high and low, far and near, exhibits the problem in understanding the size or quantity relationship, for example, big, small, more, less, greater than, less than, and so on. Express the difficulties in discriminating between the left and the right side. Face the problem in understanding the number sequence. Displays the difficulty in learning mathematical symbols like greater than, less than, plus, multiplication, division, equal to, percentage, is to. These are the symbols the child's having mathematical problem cannot understand or cannot recognize. Even children with the mathematic problem or children with dyscalculia shows the problem of counting the fingers, displays the problems in subtraction, division, multiplication, and so on. Even displays the behavior or displays the confusion regarding place value. Experience the difficulties in memorizing basic facts of multiplication or division or simple calculation. Besides that, child also experience the difficulties in other learning areas that is called as difficulties in expressive language. When child experience the problem in expressive language, he or she usually exhibits the difficulty in expressing ideas orally. Second, he displays the inability to start or hold a conversation in a group. Frequently experience the frequently having trouble finding the right words in the conversation. Sometimes he use non-specific vocabularies such as these or things and so on. Subsequently, children also experience the difficulties in receptive language. When we are talking about the receptive language, child displays the problem that not he or she seems to not listen when they are spoken to. Lack of interest when storybooks are read to them. Inability to understand complicated sentences and follow the verbal instruction. Imitate words or phrase what you just heard. Language skill below the expected level for their age were exhibited by those children. So these are the areas usually children displays while learning. Apart from that, I can say that learning difficulties is a condition which affects the child's ability adversely to acquire new skills in his or her school or any other learning situation. Therefore, simply I can say learning difficulties refer to a disorder that affects the learner's ability to interpret what they see and hear to link information from different parts of the brain, despite of having average or above average intellectual capacity. So this is the concept of learning difficulties that I shared with you. Now, if I will analyze my ideas or my experiences on the learning difficulties, then there are some behavioral indices can be deduced from that experience in order to identify the children with the learning difficulties. Those indices can be listed in the following manner. The first one can be the children with the learning difficulties exhibits difficulties in concept formation compared to the rest of the classes, demonstrate poor performance in one or more content areas of the curriculum. Learning difficulties adversely affect differently at different stages of life or different levels of schooling. For example, a child in the early grades may experience the problem in reading. There is no guarantee that the same problem will be experienced in the elementary or the secondary level or in the adolescent period. Maybe in the adolescent period, a child is experiencing problem of communication or expressive language or receptive language. Therefore, I'm saying that learning difficulties affect differently at different stages of life or different levels of schooling. The third indices can be that regardless of intellectual capacity, a child cannot be able to understand what he or she sees, hears, makes sense of things that are happening around him or her. The fifth indices can be that child is unable to link information from different parts of the brain which is involved in processing or understanding the information. Apart from that, child is unable to acquire the new skills in the environment, especially in school or any other learning situation. From these indices, we can categorize the learning difficulties mainly in two categories. One is general learning difficulties, another one is specific learning difficulties. When we are talking about the general learning difficulties, it is a condition of failing to deal with both schoolwork as well as adaptive skills. Already, I have told that when we are talking about the schoolwork, the areas of learning difficulties can be reading, writing, mathematical problems, expressive language, or receptive language, and so on. When we are talking about the adaptive skill areas, it may be self-care, taking bath, using toilet, meaning that the basic activities child unable to perform. That is coming under the adaptive skill areas. In the other ways, I can say general learning difficulties is a condition failing to acquire the skills or knowledge almost all areas of development and learning. However, specific learning difficulties is a condition that affects learners' ability adversely to acquire specific skills only in one or two of the academic areas. And these areas can be dysgraphia, can be dyslexia, can be acalculia, can be difficulty in processing the information, and so on. Again, I am trying to go more detail about learning difficulties in schools or to understand, to comprehend the more detailed way the concept of learning difficulties by discussing the nature of the learners with the learning difficulties. So when you are talking about the natures of the learners with learning difficulties, those natures can be listed in six major natures. Those six natures can be listed in the following manner. Like hyperactivity as a nature, social emotional problems, general coordination deficit, disorders of attention, disorders in memory and thinking. Let's begin with hyperactivity. Hyperactivity means that a child constantly engaged in the movement in the class. Child unable to sit still or stand still. Child is too much talkative in the class. Child is too much talkative in the class, are very much inattentive in the class. The second nature is that perceptual and motor impairment. What is perceptual and motor impairment? Perceptual and motor impairment, it is a condition of the child where he or she is unable to identify or discriminate or interpret the sensation. Child displays the poor visual decoding. For example, unable to reproduce geometrical forms correctly or accurately, reverse the letters or rotate the letters, or he or she cannot draw a geometrical shape in a proper manner or in a correct manner. Besides that, child also exhibits the poor auditory decoding, meaning that child is unable to recognize tunes, to differentiate between sounds. This is indicating the poor auditory decoding behavior of the child. Again, child cannot identify familiar objects by touching alone. Even child displays the poor visual motor disintegration. When you are talking about the poor visual motor integration means, suppose you as a teacher in the class, you gave a task that you feel a color, a particular shape or a particular diagram, and the child is unable to feel the color in a correct manner. That means he has a problem in integrating the vision and the motor skill. Child also exhibits the problems in movement, directionality, space orientation, in balance making, and so on. Subsequently, the third nature is that social emotional problem. When you are talking about the social and emotional problem, child displays the problems in interacting with the teachers, the parents, the peers, and so on. And child's having little insight about the nature of their problems and attributed those are because of luck. Childs usually displays the low self-concept, low level of aspiration. Child usually very quiet, obedient, but daydream, cannot read the consequences of what he or she is doing right now. They have the frequent temper outburst, sometimes for no apparent reasons. They are nervous, attention is difficult to hold. They are emotionally unstable, hesitate to work with other children. The fourth nature, which is very important also, that is general coordination deficits. The general coordination deficit refers to the child's physical awkwardness, poor motor integration, poor in running, catching, skipping, jumping. Their walking is rigid, stiff, poor performance in writing and drawing, frequent falls, and their behavior is clumsy in nature. The fifth nature can be disorders of attention. The disorders of attention indicates that the child cannot sustain attention for the required amount of time. They are unable to attend the relevant one and ignore the irrelevant one. Child may be easily attracted by every stimuli that surrounds them or him or her. They can be diverted easily from one topic to another topic. They put excessive attention to unimportant details while disregarding the essential or the important ones. The sixth, which is the last nature but not the least, that is disorders in memory and thinking. The child on this stage experience the difficulty in assimilation of the information, storage of the information, retrieval of the information wherever or whenever it is required, and so on. Child displays the difficulties in reproducing rhyme patterns, sequence of digits, words or phrases. Also experience difficulty in revisualizing letters, words, forms. Generally, both short-term and long-term memory of the learning difficulty children are poor. Fail to see the relationship between his present and the past experience as well. These are the nature which are indicating the learners with learning difficulties. So this is end of my today's session. Hope this session will be improving or strengthening the understanding about the concept of learning difficulties. Thank you very much for watching this YouTube video lecture. Thank you.